We are making the transition to a republic. This means no more king but a Jamaican president as head of state. One people, one republic, one Jamaica. The time by the MLCA is
1 p.m.
The people's champion. Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under law. Justice. Jamaica demand.
It is Monday. We are here for Let's Talk Justice. My name is Jade Williams, Policy Research and Advocacy Manager at Jamaicans for Justice. Unfortunately, this week we don't have Mikel Jackson with us, my usual co-host or executive director. But we hope she will be back next week. And I know she's going to be really sad to miss out on this conversation because this is one of her favorite things, to have a group of young persons, bright young persons, discussing their views about the issues that affect them. So I know she'll be listening in from where she is, but we have a good show lined up today. We're talking about the topic of school grooming. And we're trying to get some perspectives from the young persons who are being affected by these policies and the kinds of decisions that are being made at our educational institutions, right? But before we get into that, a small week that was, and unfortunately a tragic week that was on both stories. We saw a young man who is suspected of having taken his own life last week. Extremely unfortunate situation, and goes back to one of the issues that we have to be considering, and that is the mental health of young persons and how more can be done to support young persons who might be experiencing mental health issues. So it's definitely something for us to continue to interrogate, so that we see less tragedies like these going forward. We also saw this morning a disturbing report. I saw it from the Jamaica Gleaner, where a 18-year-old girl was killed in Stonyvale early this morning in a home invasion. Another tragic loss of life. Extremely upsetting to know that potential has been cut from the world so quickly. And especially on an episode like today where we'll be having young persons talking about their views, it's poignant for us to just say condolences to the family, and we hope for a speedy investigation. All right, so switching up. Yes, Smoky Vale, thank you, listener. So switching up a bit, we have our right of the day for today, or did you know for today, and it is focused on restricting your rights and what the Constitution says about that. So in our Constitution, if you are, in our Constitution, your rights are some things that are very difficult to change, very difficult to abrogate, very difficult to limit. In order for your rights to be limited, the Constitution has some specific criteria, right? It says that they have to be restricted in a way that is demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society. So what does that mean? It means that there has to be an important objective in making that restriction, so it can't be arbitrary, that the measures used are designed to complete that objective and are connected to that objective, so you can't just restrict a vast amount of things on the basis of a legitimate objective. The objective and the restriction must come together. It means that it should not be so drastic that it impairs other protected rights and freedoms. It should not be disproportionate, and the interests of the society must be balanced by the interests of individuals and of groups, right? So demonstrably justifiable, that's what that means. We also have a trivia question for today, and our trivia question for today is: in what year did the Education Act come into force? You can respond to the question by sending a WhatsApp to 2397583. You can respond in the nationwide chat, and you can respond on Instagram at JA4Justice. So, as I said at the beginning, we're talking about the topic of school grooming and trying to get an idea of the youth perspective. Now, since this 2025 school year, grooming has again become a topical issue. In this first week of school, we saw several students across high schools that were not allowed to enter the compound. We saw some cases where boys were barred for their haircuts. We saw a specific policy coming out of a certain school regarding the edges of girl students. And there's also been issues with the fitting of uniforms and that kind of thing. So these incidents have, of course, sparked public debate. We've heard from youth advocates. We've heard from other advocates, human rights advocates generally, parents, teachers. Everyone has weighed in on their opinion on how these grooming policies should apply. And, you know, the school administrators have taken it from a necessary perspective in terms of discipline, order, and uniformity. And some of the students are concerned that these measures are undermining their rights to self-expression. Now, we've seen where the Ministry of Education has been vocal on a particular aspect of this issue, and that is the students being barred from entering the campus. So the ministry maintains that, sure, the policies are important, but if it is that the child is barred, that creates a whole other slate of issues. So the ministry's directive was not to bar them, but we're still seeing some reports of barring of students. So we have with us today to discuss the issue Africa Stevens, who is the founder and executive director for Fui Children Foundation. We have Brian Anderson, who is the president of the National Secondary Students' Council. And we have Rihanna Williams, who was the top child researcher in the Caribbean in 2024 and a U.S. Embassy Youth Ambassador in 2025. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you all for being here. So I think my first question would go to Africa. I know that Fui Children has been vocal on this issue for quite some time now. What, if any, improvements have you seen in terms of the application of these policies since you guys have been advocating for some uniformity in the change?
Well, I'm not sure if I could positively speak about the improvements, as we have not received any information from students who are facing these infractions. So I would say we're still waiting to see improvements. However, we have seen the comments and we have listened to the commentary on radio and TV, and we are still concerned about the implementation of these school grooming guidelines and how they disproportionately affect the students, especially those from a particular socioeconomic background and, of course, racial descent. So we are still looking forward to getting any sort of semblance of positive reports where these things are not happening. But so far, I have not seen, or rather, we have not seen that.
All right. So essentially, you're saying that right now the issue has persisted. Brian, from your perspective, is that what you guys are seeing?
So as you have mentioned before, the biggest issue that I've seen is that students are being barred from schools. I'm not sure if it has been more common in the past, but we know that it happens a lot now because of things like grooming infractions, whether the students want to wear like braids, whether they want to have a certain bag, whether they want to grow natural hair, or even small adjustments to the uniforms. But the school does not agree with this, and it causes some conflict there. I cannot say for sure if it is more or less because I would not have been a part of this organization in the past. But as it stands right now, I have received several reports of this issue. So that's what I could say on it.
All right, thank you both. So my question first, I guess, is what is the most common challenges that we're seeing with the grooming? Is it the hairstyles? Is it the uniforms? What exactly is the challenge that we're having? I'll start with you, Rihanna.
Okay, good afternoon. Is everyone hearing me? Just making sure.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I would say the biggest challenge, as I would have seen it, is the fact that I think banning is something that seems like the quote unquote easier choice to do in opposition to just like having discussions with our students. I think that is very much important. Just having, I feel like the staff, members, school administrations, and the different institutions, they are not willing to hold discussions with the students, especially the student leaders and representatives, to hear their opinion, to try to come to some sort of middle ground. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't seem as if schools are just like against our students and their rights to not only self-expression, but their cultural expression, if we're talking about here. But I think they should really try to get the voices of the students who attend the different schools on board when it comes to making these decisions.
All right, so I know one of the things that the Ministry of Education would have said at the beginning of the year is that they have continued the consultations on the grooming policy. I know we've had a draft grooming policy from the ministry since 2023. So I think I'll ask all three of you, have your organizations or yourselves been a part of any of these consultations? And if you've seen the policy, what, if anything, you all think about what is in it? And I'll start with Africa on that.
Thank you, Jade. Actually, I'm happy that you brought up the policy. So the draft policy is finalized from 2023, and we have seen some concerns in the policy, to be honest, and no, we weren't consulted. So I may bring attention to, I think, page 6 of the policy. It reiterates the fact that there are rules and guidelines, and there's like a hierarchy of how you can go about sanctioning any infraction. Of course, from a rights-based approach, the last resort, as per the policy stated, it should be expulsion, or barring should be the last resort. And I find it quite ironic that this is even in the policy, because it's fundamentally saying if you breach these grooming guidelines, they are so egregious that you have your right to education being forfeited or delimited because you are not in conformity to these guidelines. So, of course, as you said, I note the minister's recent statement in the press stating that she has begun consultations with stakeholders. So this is our open call to invite members from the youth population, including few children, including actual representatives from the youth organizations and their councils, to chip in on how we can amicably meet at the middle ground while disciplining our students, while respecting their human dignity.
Thank you, Africa. So I think I want to ask Brian then, from the Secondary Students Council position, is there, because a lot of the critique is that, there's a necessity for discipline and that there's a necessity for uniformity in schools, and that is a part of, reducing distractions. So firstly, I wanted to know what the Secondary Schools Council thought is on the grooming policy. And then let me let you answer that first.
Okay. So thank you for that question. So as I would have previously mentioned, we are firm believers that schools should have rules, but if it's a case where they have to lock out students from schools, that's where the problem arises, because we believe this form of punishment is just a short-term solution to a long-term issue that will reoccur in the future and cause continuous conflict. It embarrasses the students, firstly, and it can lead to things like absenteeism, and most importantly, it denies them their right to education. Over the past few years, the NSSC has advocated against this issue. We have issued press releases regarding this matter because of the several reports we've received.
Ryan? All right, I think we just lost him, but we're up on the break, so when we come back from the break, we'll pick up.
New semester, your time to win. Pick up true products and you're in. True ship, true milk and true juice. True almond and true milk too. Refresh your semester in true style.
Purchase any 6 true products between August 28 and October 13 for a chance to be one of 3 grand prize winners of $200,000 or 7 weekly winners of $15,000 in supermarket or book vouchers. Visit Tradewinds Citrus on IG for details.
New semester, your time to win. Refresh your semester in true style.
Conditions apply.
Authorized by the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're discussing the issue of school grooming and getting some perspectives from our young persons. We were just speaking with Brian Anderson from the National Secondary Students Council, Africa Stevens, Rihanna Williams. But Brian, you were speaking with us. Finish up your thought for me, please, because we lost you there.
Okay, I apologize. I'm just going to reiterate what I would have said. So as I said, we believe that locking out students from schools because of their grooming is a form of short-term punishment that will not last in the long term. It won't fix the overall issue, which will reoccur in the future, which is the communication between students, their parents, and the administration. It will actually more to embarrass the students and may potentially lead to absenteeism. And most importantly, it denies them their right to receive a proper education. Over the years, the NSSC has advocated and issued press releases regarding this issue because of the multiple reports we received across the island about students being locked out of the gate because of grooming policies, and some of them haven't even received prior warnings to this. These releases would have highlighted this, and we believe that
I think we just lost him again. All right, yeah. So, but I, I appreciate where he's coming from to say that, you know, the rules are certainly important. However, they feel as though the pushing the children out of school is the issue, which is a similar issue to what JFJ would have been highlighting in its own advocacy. I guess the question would now be, one, what are the alternative measures that we could consider when, you know, trying to control for a disciplinary issue while also trying to respect the rights of students? And once we answer that question, there are a lot of messages in our nationwide chat that I'm going to put to you guys shortly. But I'll start with you, Rihanna. In terms of alternative disciplinary measures, what do you think we could be looking at rather than barring the students?
All right. So as aforementioned, I did a research project, and within that research project, I came up with a number of alternatives and recommendations, and I'll just list 2 of them. So one recommendation could be, when the schools, they are being inspected, it should also be inspected how best and the extent to which, you know, that institution complies with the hair grooming policy that was set in place by the ministry. Because I think the way how we look at it, when we are creating that policy, it's not only for the teachers, it is something for the students, because they are the ones who would have to be adhering to it. And as seen best by the school when they implement their own grooming policies. Another recommendation was, we should facilitate more teacher workshops which permeate that general idea of how to approach students of different backgrounds, because the whole idea of excluding our students and barring them from schools, it does promote a sense of, as I said, exclusion and discrimination, and that is how it will be taken. And we do not want our students to feel as if the education system that should be for them is against them.
All right, Africa, to the same question.
Okay, so of course, we're going from a legal perspective, which is under the Charter of Rights, Section 13, that any limitation on these rights must, of course, be reasonably justifiable in a free and democratic society. So we have rules, but the rules must adhere to these constitutional rights. And, of course, other recommended alternatives posited by Save the Children include positive engagement, such as addressing grooming infractions by engaging, as Rihanna said a while ago, parents and students constructively. For example, in my time, when I was in high school, we had a merit and demerit system. So you don't do your homework, you get a demerit. Or you fail to bring your PE shoes to PE class, you get after school after school suspension. It's not suspension, but
detention.
Detention, yeah, after school detention. And I want to highlight that this is done after school, so it's not interfering with your allocated time to be spent during the regular 8:30 to 2:30. So I find it quite odd that they're doing this before school has even started. So we want positive engagement with parents and students, as well as inclusive consultation, where we establish a multi-stakeholder consultation process, including all stakeholders, the OCA, UNICEF, civil society such as JAN and Save the Children, J for Justice as well, to have a comprehensive footing on how we can properly address these concerns while refusing to infringe on the students' constitutional rights.
Thank you for that, Africa. I don't know if we have Brian back. I don't think so. But I'm seeing some messages here in our nationwide chat that I'll posit to you, both of you, Brianna and Africa. I'm seeing here, why are we talking about this issue? Because there are bigger things to discuss. For example, children being trafficked, that child neglect is a bigger issue. So I want to know, from your perspective, do you think it is important to discuss these matters? And I'll start with you, Brianna, and then Africa. Rihanna.
All right, sorry, could you just repeat that question for me, please?
Yes. So I'm seeing here in our nationwide chat that persons are asking what's the merit of discussing this topic, that there are more serious topics related to children that deserve discussion, and that this is a minor issue that we don't need to discuss. So I want to know from your perspective why it is an important thing to discuss.
Okay, so in my personal opinion, I do not think that it is a minor issue, because if it were to be a minor issue, why is it that we are seeing a repeated number of cases where our students are being sent back home for how they wear their hair, right? And students, they don't only wear their hair for the sake of aesthetic purposes, but they wear it for the sake of accessibility, affordability, and just to manage their own hair in general, especially our students who are of Black and African descent, right? Another thing is, the reason why we can consider this issue a major one is because when we look at the way how schools and institutions react to students simply expressing themselves, and I'm referring to here, expressing themselves in a cultural manner, in a way that is comfortable to them and makes them feel much more secure, as to promote, a better experience of learning. When we see this happening, these institutions, they are not only going against what the ministry put in place as it relates to a grooming policy, but it also goes against sustainable development goals. And we know Jamaicans, they love their country. They have a high level of patriotism. Why is it that we're trying to make ourselves look bad as a nation just for the sake of our students coming to school in a manner that makes them feel comfortable. And once again, I'm referring to the hair.
All right, Rihanna, thanks for that. Africa?
Agreeing with Rihanna, the comment made that we're majoring in a minor, I totally disagree with that because each infringement should be treated equally as egregious. The moment we cut our eyes at these small things, we are allowing a festeration of breaches to occur in the name of, oh, it's trivial, we can overstep that. So, no, equally, child neglect, child abuse, all of these are equally important, just as equally important as barring students from school because of grooming infractions. That should not be the case. I'm positive they are consultants, policy advisors, attorneys at law, teachers who can come and meet at the middle ground and create sustainable references to address these issues instead of locking out our students. I'm sorry, I cannot agree with turning a blind eye on this.
All right, thanks for that. Do we have Brian? Yes, we do. Okay, Brian, I don't know if you heard the question I just asked, but I'd love to hear the NSSC's opinion on whether or not this is an important issue.
Okay, yes, we believe that it's an important issue because, as I would have mentioned before, it is reaching a case where students are being barred from entering schools, and it's constantly causing conflict each year. So if we have this major conflict each year, it's clearly a serious issue. And the fact that we have our students being outside of school instead of the classrooms where they have a right to be at, it clearly shows that this is an issue that must be addressed with.
You know, Brian, I'm seeing a comment that is asking if it is that this is an issue that's affecting the top schools, or it's just affecting, I guess, the lower schools or the schools that are worse performing schools. I know that the National Secondary Students Council would span basically most schools in Jamaica. So from your organization's perspective, is this an issue that's being limited to certain schools?
No, it is not. As a matter of fact, we have seen this almost in every single region across Jamaica. We have seen it with at least one school. Students are being barred because of the rules set by specific school boards. They are of the belief that they want to uphold the rules that have been there for several decades. So they are of the belief that barring may be potentially the best way to go about this, which we strongly disagree with.
No, I think the final comment from the chat that I'd read to you all, this person says, they're an elderly person, they don't believe in consulting for grooming. School is like the army. So I'll get each of your reactions to that, starting with Africa.
Okay, so that comment is quite sadly true in a way if you look at it from that lens. But the school should not be an army. It should be an open space for socialization. It's, as Emil Durkheim said, part of functionalism, good order and governance structure. These institutions instill these morals in our students. So it should not be like an army where you just do as you're told. And an army should not even be do as you're told, but in the best interest of your fellow men. Going back to the United Nations Convention on Rights of the Child, Article 2, freedom from discrimination, Article 3, the best interest of the child should be the primary consideration when we're looking at these guidelines and rules that govern our students. And of course, my favorite, Article 28, which is the right to education, and Article 28.2 also underpins the point that any disciplinary action issued by the school should be humane, should not rob the child of their human dignity or act against the convention. And of course, Jamaica ratified this convention in 1991, and we have our subsidiary statute called the Child Care Protection Act. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing any reference about freedom of expression in the CCPA, but I do see that parents have a duty to assist with their child getting their right to education. So I would like to turn off tangents a slight bit, where we had the amendment made to the CCPA recently, and the mandatory punishment for children in conflict with the law that commit murder, age 14 to 17, they have 30 years mandatory minimum before they're even eligible for parole. And I'm saying you went out of your way to do all these amendments, and you did not try to amend the CCPA to include freedom from discrimination in the local statute. So it seems as if there's the idea that we need to punish in order for us to see change, and that's something that is not really true. We can progress, as Frantz Fanon said in his book, The Wretched of the Earth, Black man, do not see yourself in the eyes of the white man's gaze. We can progress as intellectuals, black intellectuals, to have sustainable and rights-based approach in rules that govern us as a black society.
Thanks for that, Africa. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to ask you all to stay with us, and we'll get perspectives from Brian and Rihanna when we come back.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
33 degrees Celsius in Kingston, 32 degrees Celsius in Montego Bay.
Do it for your best life, do it. Go check your HIV status, do it. So keep your life trending, no pretending. Me I tell yourself it, do it for you, do it for you. Every time you are link with a condom, coulda husband, coulda wife, coulda be a random. Condom connect and protect your profile. Be your own fan, do it for your best life. Do it for your best life. Do it, don't put yourself at risk. Condom connect every time. Do it for your best life. Do it.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We're discussing the topic of school grooming and getting perspectives from Africa Stevens, founder of Who Children, Brian Anderson, the president of the National Secondary Students Council, and Rihanna Williams, currently a U.S. Embassy Youth Ambassador and a researcher that would have researched specifically in this area. Well, before the break, we were asking our panelists to react to older persons saying that it's not necessary to consult youth on these issues, that school should be more like a military or more like the army, where you have rules and you abide by them. So I will take Rihanna next and then Brian.
Okay, so the notion that schools should not include the students when we're making these decisions, I do not think that it's just, especially because, as I said, when we come to school, we expect, especially as students and young people, because most students, they only go to two places, home and school, right? Imagine if it's a case where the students, they don't have a safe environment at their home. Imagine coming to school again just to hear that the ones who should be there for you 5 days a week, they're not in your corner. They're not ready to serve you as it relates to ensuring that the students have a safe and secure environment where they can feel comfortable. Because in that sense, if we do not get the perspective of the young people, how can we expect them to feel good enough, comfortable enough to produce what the nation, especially the country, wants to see? As they love to say, the creme de la creme. They want to see Jamaica on many merit lists. They want to see their students on propelling their schools to be way up in the top 10, right? How do you expect that and you're not allowing your students to express themselves, not only in the way how they dress, but to express themselves vocally as it relates to what is right for them, what their rights mean, especially when the students themselves know what their rights are and they want to create that space where they can talk about it. But the schools are not listening. They're not willing to hold that discussion. They're not willing to hold that safe space to create that safe for that space for the students, that particular environment. I don't think that if we have our students feeling this particular way, you will not see the result that you want to see from our students, which is top performers in the region and worldwide.
Thank you, Brianna. Brian?
Yes, so I think I understand the point that is being made by the panelists. However, what I don't agree with is the comparison of schools to armies. It doesn't fully work. Armies are basically based off complete obedience and command, but schools are more of a place of learning, growth, and development. Students are not soldiers. They are young people with rights that must be respected. And every child has the right to learning and the right to be in conversation of matters that actually affect them. So when schools enforce rules in a way that bars students from learning it or humiliates them, this can cross into the violation of those rights. I believe that discipline should exist, but should also be corrective, fair, and aim to overall develop the child that we're catering it to. So if we treat schools exactly like armies, we're risking silencing the students and not actually hearing their voice. We're moving into an age where we want to have more freedom of expression, and where it seems that we want to stay in this era of not allowing students to freely express themselves. So I believe that the goal of schools rules should not be to just blindly invoke in obedience and command, but to be guiding students towards responsibility and the overall development of themselves.
Thank you for that. You know, a lot of the critique that we're generally seeing is that, is it that the students want to, and I know you said it, Brian, that it's not necessarily that you don't want any rules, but, the critique is it that the students want to, be like Americans where they can just wear whatever they want to school? Is it that the students, they're not acknowledging the fact that, the edges in particular look a certain way, or the hairstyle is untidy, or, it visually looks bad to the adults, right? So my question is, how do you respond to that critique to say that this level of restriction is necessary because of how far, a student might take it? And I'll start with Rihanna.
Yes, thank you. I was hoping you'd ask me because I have been thinking about the answer to that. When I think about what students respond to especially when it comes to ages, because I have seen comparisons within schools and the students who attend these institutions. There has been some schools where they don't ban edges completely, but they tell the ladies, we want you to look neat. We want you to look tidy. We want you to look presentable. The issue with the edges, they talk about, they're in the bathroom. It leaves a disgusting residue. I've heard from a particular school where they haven't banned edges completely, but they tell their ladies, we want you to look neat. So do your edges, look neat. Don't overdo it. And ensure that you're using the right product. And I feel like when we're talking about this, especially when it comes to use the right products and not to just ban it completely, we're opening the space to say, okay, we acknowledge your ethnicity, we acknowledge that our schools are predominantly Black students, and we want you to embrace that. And edges are, as I said, they're not just for aesthetics, because edges have been coming from the African descent diaspora, African descent, emphasis on African descent, right? That diaspora. They want the students to express themselves, but do it in a manner that makes them look good. And other schools, they just ban it completely. And I think that just leaves room to talk to your students, hear them out, listen to them, and try to find a middle ground, as we hear Africa say.
Africa, I don't know if you have any opinion on the particular edges question, because I see even a comment in the chat specifically about that.
Well, I may have a bit to say Well, agreeing with what Ariana said a while ago, the idea of what is acceptable, it seems to be coming from an ethnocentric idea. And of course, we're coming from pre-colonial state of our history right now. So we were once colonized by the Europeans. We had this instructed in us based on our history that is what the norm is. You must look neat and proper. And the idea of neat and proper is subjective depending on who is the person that's enforcing that rule, which brings us back again to the middle ground. The policy that should have been comprehensively addressing these concerns is not sufficient to hatch these disagreements. This is why we're recalling on our state actors and policymakers to go back to the drawing board and be cognizant of these nuances, socioeconomic background, race, religion, so we don't come across, and I do hope it was not something intentional based on the policy that was presented, that we don't come across inadvertently segregating persons because of their racial background.
I want to ask, in terms of the policy that we have, a policy is a policy. And one of the issues with a policy is that its enforcement can be very varied because it's optional to take and leave parts of a policy. I don't know if any of you have an opinion on whether or not we should be moving away from policy and more towards maybe putting something in the Education Act or the Child Care and Protection Act that would kind of put this issue to bed in terms of law. So I'll start with Brian on that question.
Okay, so what I believe that we should do is to more involve the students when making these kinds of changes. If we want to actually create a change that works for everyone, we need to involve both the students who the rules and guidelines will actually affect, and also the administrators who are the ones actually enforcing the rules. So something that we can possibly do is to call for more meetings and discussions. For example, you could have a meeting between the NSSC and the Association of Board Chairmen and the Ministry of Education, and we discuss ways we can potentially move forward. One opinion from one person will not work for sure, and it will vary, yes. But another thing that we can also do is to limit the demographic. So we can have more regional discussions. Jamaica is separated into 7 different regions, so we can have more regional discussions with these kinds of stakeholders. So greater consultation is needed. So we should include these types of bodies and build further rapport and collaboration so that we can reform this kind of policy.
Thank you, Brian. Africa, I don't know if you had any opinion on policy versus law, or if we should be moving towards that.
Well, coming from the legal background, I strongly suggest law because it has more teeth to it. And of course, when they're going to implement that law, we would be coming from a perspective which is rights-based and upholding the Constitution. So, of course, is it justified, and how we frame it, it doesn't infringe on one's freedom of expression, culture, or religion. These considerations are necessary to any law, and if we're going to follow this, then it would give more of a robust implementation to the administrators, so they can say, okay, this policy is conflicting with the law, so I have to backtrack and reconsider how I want to remedy time spent in the bathroom combing hair. Because me saying, okay, I'm going to ban you guys completely from doing your hair, styling your hair during classes time, that's inadvertently saying it's okay to ban persons for being black or expressing their own self-expression. because it doesn't confine to what you deem as appropriate. So, of course, I would lean towards reforming or amending the Education Act or creating an independent statute for school grooming, so we can have some sort of legal footing, and even in the case if it's breached, we can have the court's assistance in, and I think we should have the court assistance by now because it's getting come back to us. It's 3 years now. This has been reoccurring. We have been watching this every school semester. We wait to see if there's a report of a child being turned back because of their hair or missing school belt or a belt, a button. So it seems to be something that the legal jurisprudence should tap into because the policy is apparently not working and we need to move past this now.
Thanks for that, Africa. We're going to take another break. When we come back, I'll take the final words from all of you on this issue.
Residents of Jacks River, St. Mary, do you want to apply for a title but need to get your land surveyed? The National Land Agency and the VM Foundation are inviting you to a community meeting on Wednesday, September 16, 2025 at Faith Ministries Church, Jacks River, St. Mary from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Come and learn how you can have your land surveyed and apply for a title for your property. For more details, call 876-750-5263. The National Land Agency, one goal.
It's Monday. Get over your blues. Or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The E-Zone is here for you. With the Stinger Honey Bee.
And Curry Boyatings.
From 3 to 5 p.m. on Nationwide 90 FM.
We've got your entertainment news.
Then we want to hear your views. Why you said?
Jump in the mix.
Or the hot seat.
Don't miss our brain busters.
Or the crazy giveaways.
Let's talk fashion.
Send us your outfit of the day. Ooh, cutesy. Very demure.
Are you looking for love?
Come on one of our blind dates. Send your request to ezone blinddates@gmail.com. That's ezoneblindates@gmail.com.
And stay tuned for your confessions.
These are my confessions.
Share them with us at ezoneconfessions@yahoo.com. I mean, is this planet Earth?
Is it?
I don't know. Let me check. Either way, it's got a buzz.
And a bugger thing.
Ow! Ow!
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We've been discussing the topical issue of school grooming with some of our young people, Rihanna Williams, our top child researcher from 2024, and the U.S. Youth Ambassador 2025, Brian Anderson, the president of the National Secondary Students Council, and Africa Stevens, the founder and executive director of Fiwi Children Foundation. So, we've had some robust discussion. And I'd just like for you guys to give us your last word, your call to action, whatever you want, your final word on this issue. And I'll start with you, Rihanna.
Okay, thank you. I think that, that when it comes to the barring of the students from school and turning them back and preventing them from doing things that is related to them expressing themselves culturally and in a self-expression manner, I think that, we see it coming from the schools. I think that the policy, there needs to be something else other than the policy because the draft has been revised, one, and we see that schools are still not listening to what the minister says. We see where the minister, she's speaking and encouraging schools to not do such and such, but schools are still not adhering to what the minister says. So I think that the ministry needs to kind of put their foot down. And if it means bringing in some legal actions, I think that will be very suitable because as we are seeing, the policy draft has not been creating for any improvements when it comes to ensuring that our students are getting to access their rights. Another thing is that I want to see because we know that the minister said that they're in the process of finalizing the draft, I would really like to see the minister include the voices of the students. And once that is finished, I would love to see them acknowledge publicly that they have done so.
All right. Thank you very much, Rihanna. Brian?
Yes, so I believe that the grooming policy must strike that balance between right and maintaining order within the individual schools. It must allow students to clearly express themselves without jeopardizing the entire operation of a school system. While we acknowledge that some level of compromise is expected in the institutions, the students should not feel that their education is at risk simply because of how they feel to express themselves. The NSSC strongly believes that students' councils and students, by extension, should have a greater role in shaping how these policies are set and how they are implemented. And rules that affect students the most should not be made without our voices being at the table. Discipline in schools should also be more, have a rehabilitative approach instead of being simply just to punish students and to invoke order and discipline. So we call for more clear communication and transparency between schools and the Ministry of Education, and for students to avoid confusion, to avoid this confusion and harsh punishment of our students. So most importantly, the ministry and administrators should also be at the table for more clear discussions and consultations at both national and regional levels. It is only through this collaboration that I believe we can create policies that are fair and consistent for everyone.
Thank you very much, Brian. And Africa, from you, your final word.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jade. So our final word would be, of course, drawing from both Brian and Rihanna. Similarly, students should not feel like their education is a privilege. It is a right safeguarded under the Constitution of Jamaica, and specifically the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, where all persons, and I say all persons, I'm highlighting as well, it includes children in Jamaica who are entitled to the enjoyment and protection of these rights. So grooming infractions based on these four main rights, such as non-discrimination, freedom of expression, and the right to education. These policies violate these rights, whereas barring children from schools clearly is affront to this right. So of course, the policy, as we have reiterated in this discussion, is not sufficient enough, and through children would posit making an amendment to the Education Act as per our call to action in our press release to the Honorable Minister, as well as either amending the CCPA to protect the students' best interests and rights as enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Jamaica has ratified since 1991. And school administrators should not bar students from schools for grooming infractions. A more proportionate and fair approach should be implemented.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for joining us on today's episode of Let's Talk Justice. We appreciate you spending the time with us. I know we spent a lot longer than we would have expected, but it's an important topic that needed some veneration. So thanks again to you all, Rihanna, Brian, and Africa.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity once again.
All right, so just to say, which I'm sure our audience must know this by now, as we have covered this topic almost every school year since the show has been running. It's been about 3 years now, and we've covered this topic multiple times. But JFJ's position is that barring the students from the school is problematic, and it's not only an issue related to their right to education. It is an issue related to their safety. A lot of the times when the students are barred from school, they have nowhere to go. Parents are at work, the house is locked up. Sometimes school is not even close to home. And so you attend school and then you're told you cannot enter the compound. That can lead to some dangerous situations for some of these students. So it is not that, and I don't think any of our panelists said that it is not that rules should exist. I think what everyone was saying is that, one, there needs to be a certain level of consideration and consultation with the students. Two, that there needs to be some consideration of our cultural aspects of our cultural history, of our African hairstyles, and a bit more sensitivity towards that in formulating these kinds of policies. You know, I remember being at school and reading a poem, I think it's an Olive Senior poem, called Colonial Girls' School. And I attended a colonial girls' school. And I remember seeing myself in this poem talking about how you are being forced to conform to something that in your African nature is unnatural to you. Your hair is supposed to be straight and your hair don't make straight. You know, you're supposed to be wearing clothes that in your tropical climate would put you into heat stroke, all to conform to this kind of colonial idea of what expression should be. So it's even something that the Supreme Court commented on, because we saw it in that Kensington primary case where they spoke to the fact that expression has to do with one's identity as well, one's cultural expression, one's religious expression. It's not simply, freedom of speech. So it's something that we have advocated for the ministry to do a more direct directive. We did see a directive from the ministry saying that the students shouldn't be barred, but we would also see conflicting information in the policy where it says you bar the student as a last resort. It's either they shouldn't be barred or you bar them as a last resort, right? So we are hoping that some consolidation of what should be done when these issues come up happen soon, and that would not include barring the students from school. I'm sure that there are alternative disciplinary measures that can be taken, and we must be looking at those rather than barring the students. All right, so before we go, we do have a winner for a trivia question. The question was, in what year was the Education Act passed? And the answer was 1965. The winner was Bethan Witch on YouTube, in the YouTube chat. So Bethan, please message our 2397583 number to get the details on receiving your prize. But you will have to pick up the prize in person here at 6 Bradley Avenue at the Nationwide Studio. So someone will reach out once you message us at 2397583. Now, the final thing I'll say, we spoke a lot about policies. We spoke a lot about decisions that school makes, rules. One of the things that we need to see is information. And in order to get that information, you can make an access to information request. Now, we have been pushing this because we think that more and more persons need to be coming from a grounded perspective that is based in knowledge. We've been using the phrase "don't guess requests," and I stand by that. So we are encouraging persons, if you want to know about school grooming policies, if you want to know about even internal policies at schools that are public schools or schools that have up to 50% of public shares, then you are able to make an access to information request and get that information through the Ministry of Education. So, you can reach out to right2knowja.com and you will be able to see all of the information as to how to make a request, but also you'll be able to make the request yourself through the form on the website. So right2knowja.com is where you go to do that. So thank you all for joining us on this episode of Let's Talk Justice, and we appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week, Monday.
Jamaicans, by justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities, no to unlawful detention and police brutalization, class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
The NHT is lending up to $12 million for homes priced at $14 million or less, making home ownership more accessible for Jamaicans. We are building Jamaica.
The time by the office of the Prime Minister is
2 p.m.
Residents of Jacks River St. Mary,